I said no, hey, yeah.
Hi, this is Matt Gressick. Welcome to another edition of Brick and Mortar. I'm your host.
And I'm Eric Ebersole, hosting along with Matt today. We are continuing a number of really important subjects, and today we hit one that's near and dear to my heart, and that is
Community schooling. Community schools in Maryland. We have two wonderful young women here who to talk to us about community schools, and we're excited about it. If you could please introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you, and enlighten us about your process in community schools.
Sure. Thanks for having us, guys. I also appreciate the young moniker. I'll take it. I'm Tricia Collins-McCarthy. I'm the very proud principal of Johnny Cake Elementary School in Catonsville, Baltimore County. I just finished my 5th year as the principal there. And this is our first year. We finished our first year of being a community school. So it's been a great, absolute, awesome experience for us.
All right.
Rachel.
Hi, I'm Rachel Valsing. I'm the community school facilitator at Johnny Cake, along with Tricia. And I'm really happy to be here today to talk about this experience. I've been working in Baltimore County for, I guess now 16 years. And prior to this role, I worked in visual arts. I was an art teacher and department chair at Lansdowne High School and at Towson High School.
Well, great. Well, community schools. It's a rather non-descriptive term, actually. Yeah. When I first heard it and learned about it, I was like, it sounded very generalized, but in fact, it's not very generalized at all. In fact, it's very specific. And so, but first, let's talk about them as educators, because these are our brick and mortar people. So, before we get into community schools, which I'm just champing at the bit to do, tell us each about your, and you can choose any one of these three, your most difficult or challenging or funniest or most rewarding moment in your education career, because this humanizes you to us. We got to know who you are a little bit.
So, I've had lots of different experiences in education. Started as a para-educator in a physical education program in San Bernardino City in Southern California. And then I was a counselor, an assistant principal. I was a physical education teacher, and now a principal. And I think back a lot to the things that I did in San Bernardino City. And just some of the experiences I had, and something that has always stuck with me that I've shared with my staff a couple different times is an experience I had when I was a first year physical education teacher. And, I think I was 24, I clearly knew everything. And
I remember this.
Yeah, I was ready to tell everyone what I knew, right.
I was brilliant.
Yeah, I know, right? I knew so much then. And I just remember this one young man in particular, 6th grader. I still remember his day. His name was Jeremiah. And, he was struggling behaviorally in my class. And I remember I said to him, do I need to call your mom and dad and we can have a conversation? And he looked at me and he said, my mom's dead, my dad's in jail, what are you going to do for me? And I just remember that being, first of all, I was like,
that has
oh
to be
my
an
gosh.
overwhelming moment.
It was overwhelming, and I just thought, who am I to come in and say, oh, I'm going to fix this, I'm going to call your parent. And I really took that as an opportunity to connect with him and learn more about him as an individual and kind of figure out, how best to build a relationship with him. And that one moment set me on the path that I have for relationships.
How old was this? Yeah, it's this 6th grade.
6th grade. So he, the thing I remember about Jeremiah is he was 13.
Yeah.
And, I shared with him, I said, wow, when I was 13, I was a freshman in high school. What is it like to be older than your peers? And tell me. And that really set me on this course of what we do is first and foremost relationships and the critical work that connecting with kids does for us, selfishly, and then for them as individuals. And I still remember that as really being critical in my path of connecting.
But you probably had set up some level of him understanding that you cared for him to articulate that with you in that situation.
I think so. I think it was this thing where he knew if he said to me, hey, this is what I've got going on, that it was going to be met with hopefully some understanding, but a goal of getting to know him better so that I could really connect with him differently.
Love educators, Matt. Don't you just
Yeah, they like just...
My God. This is why we love having him on board.
Oh, Rachel.
Similar question.
Yeah, so I think this story, I mean, I kind of went to something that was sort of funny to me and has always
That
stuck
way
with me
too.
that way, but also I think translates in a way that is more meaningful. And I was remembering back to, again, kind of earlier in my career, maybe like in my second or third year teaching art, and the school I was at was had an academy program, and so we all had shirts these shirts that sort of advertised the Academy of Arts and Communications, and so I happen to be teaching, and I am in the going through the lesson kind of in the morning, and my department chair stops in, and he's wearing we're wearing our academy shirts that day, and I just remember one of my students like leaning over to me, and he goes, y'all aren't married, are you?
That's so funny.
And I was like, immediately like bright red, like just I was like, like just like totally new teacher, like just like I was like, no, and like, but yes, exactly. We just happen to do this.
That's how rumors get started.
Right.
And,
Right.
like,
But I definitely, I remember that story a lot, because I think that, on the more like meaningful side of it, like I do think that this idea that students, I think kind of, if you have a really good team and you work with a really strong team in your school, and and you work in an environment where students really like see their school as an extension of their home, like then it's like it does feel like family, and you do, and you kind of like find that those sort of, like to what Tricia was saying about relationships, it all really goes back to just those connections.
So we'll talk about community schools, but you both have described something that community schools do intentionally rather than sort of organically.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very important point.
it's a great segue into our next question.
Here we go.
You both are involved with a school that has a community school program. What we would love to hear, what our listeners would love to hear, is describe how that works on a daily basis, and as well as like a long-term basis, like between your relationship, like because you have to have a relationship between the principal and the community schools coordinator to make it successful. So describe like what does that look like?
I'm so glad that you brought that up. I think one of the things when I started this job, I went into a full week of like just daily professional development, and one piece of advice that really stood out to me we went through a lot of information in that time, but one piece that really stood out to me was one of our coaches from like the partnering organization that works with Baltimore County, it's Y Maryland, mentioned, he said, if the relationship between the principal and the facilitator are not in place, or coordinator, given on which municipality you're in, like you cannot move the strategy of community schools forward. It's really about working together. And I will say, like, my experience at Johnny Cake, when I talk about like your team being like a family, has been no exception. Like it's really, it really is a joint effort, and it's not just that we meet every couple weeks. Right. It's like, that we are really committed to the goals of making the kinds of like comprehensive supports like accessible to our families and to our students and staff.
Talk about a few of those supports.
Sure. I think, we think about, like, as Matt said, like the daily work that you do as a community school, and then those kind of overarching things that you want to make sure you have. I think first and foremost, it's that engagement, with the community, and what does that look like? And for us, that may look like something as simple as a parent coming to school with a question that is best answered probably by someone outside of our school, but knowing that they could come to us and we would support them in getting, the right phone number.
Wraparound services.
Absolutely,
Right, hence the term community schools. You were involving the community.
Yep. And, I think the second thing too is, as Rachel said, it's a home. I mean, we spend time with students that perhaps their own families may not be able to because of work or circumstances. And so we want it to be a place where kids feel connected, supported, loved. We're a hugging school. We're a hugging. Okay, come here, let's do it. And because that's an important thing. And then I think the third thing is for our staff. It's just a different way to view the work that we do every day in the bigger context of the impact it makes on our community. And, something I know, Eric, that you came to Johnny Cake when we had our bike rack, you know, and that was like oh my God, it was a bike rack. My kids were so stoked. And that was what our community wanted.
They needed
right?
that,
Yeah.
right? They needed a bike rack so kids could ride their bikes to school.
Absolutely, and now we have a
Sounds
process.
like a little thing, but
it was a big thing,
It's not, right?
And it was now we have a process whereby we can do the things that I think, as a leader there, that I've wanted to do for years, and now we have the awesome Rachel, but we have a way in which we can do it now. That allows us to connect differently.
It's a nice honorific awesome instead of Mr.
First name awesome.
I like that.
Yeah.
I really like that beginning. I think one of the things that you get to here is that community schools add value to the school.
Absolutely.
For kids, and of course, some people say, "Well, shouldn't they just be teaching? Isn't that what schools are for? Just teaching
Right.
stuff." But you're adding value to that by adding value to the other things you do. The kids think that you're legit. You give yourself all kinds of credibility, and then when you go to teach them something, it's like, wow, this must be part. It's not seen as a separate part of the scheme.
Right, and it's definitely a connection. I mean, I can't
help it.
No, I mean it's been I think how we found out we would be a community school was really kind of funny too. I went to a Title I meeting, and it was basically a slide went up, and they were talking about community schools.
There you were.
And I was all like, well, that's Johnny Cake, and what does it mean to be a community school?
Right.
And how does that look different from what we might already be doing? What did that mean for us in terms of funding and positions and connection? And it's probably been one of the best things I think that's happened to our school since I've been there.
It's not just tutoring kids after school.
No,
I know everybody thinks that's all it is
right.
setting up, supports and remediation, but you're doing much more.
Yep,
more.
absolutely. I love it.
We'll do that. Well, hey Matt, I think we have a phone call.
Right on time, right on cue.
I love it. These callers, they know when to call in. Oh, let me pick up. Hey there, caller. How are you? That's a familiar voice.
So familiar.
Only familiar because I
Flashback.
think this person has called in before, not for any other reason. Just remember that. Caller, tell us your name, and we have some people here about community schools. Maybe you'd like to ask them a question.
That sounds great. My name is Tara Ebersole, and my question for today is, how do community schools coordinators determine what school population needs are, and how do you best provide for them?
Great. On point.
On point.
How do you determine? How do you find out the
So you guys were talking about the process.
Nice question, caller. Thank you.
Yeah.
And by the way, sometime, if you'd like to get a cup of coffee or something, we could get together and have one if you'd like. Okay?
I'm just so excited.
See you later.
Now could you dive deeper into that process
Sure.
of how stakeholders?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, one of the most exciting parts of my work this year would perfectly address this question. So the first year of becoming a community school involves conducting a needs assessment. And that involves listening sessions where we bring groups of stakeholders together. That would be whether our community members, our staff, our students, our families, to talk about what their interests are in the school, what the strengths are in the community, and what things that they would want to see more of. So those are pieces of it. We also conduct a survey and use survey information from Baltimore County's annual stakeholder survey. So combining those pieces as well. And family engagement. So we host a number of family engagement events throughout the school year, and the purpose of those events is also to continue collecting information about what it is that our school can provide more of to our families and our community.
I had one coordinator asking me if I wanted to go out and elected official, and I wasn't political, but she said, "Do you want to go knock doors with me? We're going to go knock on people's doors and ask them to complete the survey for us online." And I said, "Sure," because I'm not afraid to knock doors. So, but there's lots of ways to gather, and some of it's organic. Some of it you find out organically, right?
Absolutely, and I will say, one of the best parts of our or aspects of our school is we have an amazing front office staff. So after me, Tricia was the first person I met, and then immediately followed by our amazing head administrative secretary, Robin Radcliffe.
You cannot mention that person.
Oh my gosh!
Yes.
And
Worked in the school long enough.
Absolutely. Yep. You know who runs the school.
Yes. And,
Education support professionals.
Correct. Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
And really, and I will say, like, you know, working with the front office, her and the front office staff this year has just been an incredible experience, and they graciously even allow me to like substitute for them if someone's absent. And it's like, and that is really where you learn so much about what's happening in the school. People are coming in and out of the office all the time. And actually, given just, you know, the strength of our staff, our front office staff, like we were able to write into our grant funding that would support creating a welcome center within our lobby. That is really like,
That's
you know,
awesome.
I didn't get into school that day. I only stood outside.
Right, yeah, and it's so great because that's going to be a location where families can say, well, you know, I'm not sure, but you know where I could find out? The Welcome Center at Johnny Cake.
Yeah.
You know, we could go there,
See,
we
and
can
there's all
talk.
that, yeah.
Right, it's resources
Community
and
hub.
absolutely, and combining them and really just thinking, what does our community want to see in their school? I mean, you know, I firmly, like, I know I serve at the discretion of the superintendent and the Board of Education, but I also, you know, I serve my community. I mean, that's as principal, you know, that's my biggest role is what does my community need? How do I give it to them? How do I sustain that? And then what are the results when we do that, you know?
Great answer. All right, so I've sort of addressed this a little bit myself already, but I want you to too. What do you think the biggest misconception is that people in the school or out of the school, I don't care which ones you deal with, about what community schools actually are and what they actually do? I mean, are there generally also how you serve a community of concentrated poverty as well?
Yeah. I think for those of us that have spent, you know, their career or any time working in Title I schools, you know, there's always this kind of, I don't think it's accurate at all, but that, you know, students can't, or, you know, the community doesn't want, or, you know, there are things that our students are not able to do, and we need to swoop in and make sure that is not what happens. You know, the biggest thing is our kids are like my son. They want to go to a safe school.
Yep.
That, you know, supports them, you know, emotionally, academically, that they connect with, that when they go, that people know their name and something about them. And I think that's what their families want as well. And so, you know, for us, the community school has added value to what we are already doing as a Title I school. Mm-hmm. Certainly money gives you the opportunity to do things you didn't, you know, think you could do before, or maybe weren't able to. But the biggest thing is, you know, when kids come into that building, every day they are greeted by no less than 6 people that stand in the front lobby making sure our kids come in, and the first person that they see is going to be greeting them, welcoming them, you know, giving them a hug, smiling at them. In some cases, if they're upset, we're going to be taking them to the person, if it's not us, that can help and support them. And that's what we do. You know, that's what you would want in a community. And
So
I think people don't know that.
So it sounds like people would assume it's just a bunch of programs you're tossing.
Absolutely,
at kids. But
yeah.
actually
It's
what it
not
is
stuff.
You're making connections
We're
with
making
kids.
connections, which I think is the long-lasting impact.
And you have to work hard at that. That
Absolutely.
doesn't happen in a week or a
Correct.
month. Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, I could only add just in saying that, again, it is, you know, it is really the community school, like, the way it works is it is a strategy. It is not a program. And I think that's really something.
It's different in every school. It takes a different life in every building, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm sure you communicate with other community schools coordinators in the county at least.
Yeah, and certainly.
And they're doing different things than you.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think, you know, that idea of it being something that is, it's not a one size fits all, you know, and certainly, right, because not every place that is within Baltimore County or within, you know, anywhere, right, is exactly the same, you know, and that we really are, you know, and it also is really founded on partnerships. It's not, you know, I mean, the financial piece is important, but it's really about making that count through partnerships and through resources that are relevant and necessary.
Well, this has been a wonderful interview. We're gonna
We are happy
an hour
to
and a
do
half
it.
long.
yes. We're gonna end it with a little fun. about, and I'm glad you listened to our podcast beforehand. So what, like, if you were queens for a day, what would you change? What mascot would you change?
Can be any school
Any
you went
school
to,
you
a school
to.
you worked at,
Oh my
and they
gosh.
had a mascot that you thought, gosh, okay, as an example, Matt and I
Yeah.
give this example. We both taught at Reservoir High School.
Yes.
Reservoir Gators.
Gators,
We always
yeah.
thought they should be the retrievers.
For the dogs.
Oh,
That
for
we
the
could say
dogs.
Reservoir Dogs. you
That's
know.
so funny, right? Yeah,
I
no
actually
Tarantino.
I was there in the school and I suggested it, and they all said,
Oh my
"Stop
gosh.
it, Eric! Stop it now!" Okay.
Well, you know what's really funny is when I got to Johnny Cake 5 years ago, we had, we've always been the Jaguars, right? I think they were the Gems at one point, and I think it transitioned to the Jaguars. We had a really nice, calm, docile-looking Jaguar, and I was like, for the work we need to do and what I want to put out there, we need, as I call it, scary Jaguar. It's like this Jaguar. It's got some teeth, right? Some
Right.
green eyes and some claws. And so we joke around that it's either Scary Jaguar or Tricia's Jaguar, right? And I've learned not everyone wants a Scary Jaguar emblazoned on their T-shirt, so we may have to have some shirts without that on it. But I intentionally, said we need to do some work here.
Okay.
And the work needs to represent us as like these fierce individuals that are going to work with our kids.
Passionate.
And our Absolutely. So we
not a change
changed
in the name, but a change in the
so I
emblem.
changed it, and I just
Yeah.
remember
Yeah.
when I showed it to the staff, they were like, "Well, that looks different." I said, it looks different for a reason, and so so that was a unique opportunity. I was like, "That's a very nice looking Jaguar. I want means business
Well,
Jaguar."
my years as elected official, I know that change is difficult. So
Right,
good
yeah,
on you.
Yeah, so that was fun. That was really fun.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And I gotta say, I definitely, I was so glad to see this question because I wanted to make sure that we did talk about
We talked about Scary Jaguar. Yeah.
Scary Jaguar.
Scary Jaguar. Yeah.
So I could definitely say as much the same. And, given that, like, one of the things that I do kind of bring to this position is my art background, and that I, did for a number of years, like, just help out with different things like T-shirts and graphics and things for all the schools I've worked at, and so this role is really a great one for me to like work with the Jaguar quite a bit.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So rather than change the name, we have a change in disposition.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Right. It's fine to be like nice and calm. That's awesome. But we're gonna do some work, man. We
cranked
gotta,
up.
we
Yeah.
gotta have Scary Jaguar.
Well, I just want to say thank you to the both of you for coming here.
You guys broke new
And-
ground. We never had two guests.
Yes.
Oh, well,
yes.
this is
First
great.
ever.
Thank you
It's
for
clear.
asking us.
Well, that's important to note because you have, as you said, you have to get along. The two
Yeah.
of you have to be a team.
Yes.
You've clearly demonstrated that here.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
Tricia, like, 5 years ago when I
Yeah.
first met you, over 5 years ago when I first met you, it's one of those things to be said that Johnny Cake was ripe ground, was fertile ground for community schools because you're just a wonderful leader.
Oh, thank you.
And
Matt.
thank you so much. And Rachel, this is my first time meeting you, but like just hearing wonderful things from this lady, I can't, you're making a difference in kids' lives.
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you for
clear.
doing that.
Clear.
Thank you
You've been
so
doing it
much,
for a long
guys.
time, actually.
Yeah. Thanks for
Okay.
having us today.
So that brings us to the end of the episode that I looked forward to the most and had the most fun with
There you
community
go.
school. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with another episode. I hope you'll tune in again. This is Brick and Mortar Education from the Inside Out.
Take care.